TIF update. I am currently watching people engage in sexual activity. The Frenchman has been staying in my apartment for the past few days. I gave him a couple of days, at most. However, 2 days eventually became 3 days, and the third day was literally yesterday, which is when the French invasion finally came to an end. This was never part of my plan, especially after the events of my previous post. But the Frenchman showed up at my apartment following yet another explosive argument with his ex-girlfriend, and asked me if I was willing to make him my temporary roommate for a day or two because being roommates with his ex-girlfriend was not exactly, how do you say, peaceful, right? The Frenchman had enough social awareness to at least acknowledge how inappropriate it was to expect anything from me considering the fact that A, we hardly knew each other, and B, based on our recent history, I knew enough about the roller coaster he called a relationship to not want any part of it. However, apparently all of the people he used to call friends were supposedly friends with his ex-girlfriend first, which made him feel like he had zero support and nowhere to go, so he decided to make his problem our problem. I was reluctant to get involved, but he seemed very vulnerable, and I was too weak to tell a heartbroken man to go away, so I made him promise me that he would be gone in 2 days. As you know, it was more than 2 days. It was 3 long days of feeling like I messed up. Let me explain. Day 1, asterisk. The Frenchman not only decided to cook for me towards the end of the day, but he also seemed to enjoy listening to me complain about work. It actually would have been a surprisingly wholesome first day if the Frenchman didn't feel the need to joke about getting an erection from hearing me use big English words to describe my responsibilities at work. I awkwardly called it a night as soon as it became clear to me that one of us did indeed have a strong physical reaction that was very hard to miss. Day 2, asterisk. The Frenchman convinced me to join him for an early morning run. Along the way, he approached different girls on the street and thickened his already thick French accent before saying, "If I can prove I have your name tattooed on my butt, may I please get your number?" If the girls said yes, which most of them did, the Frenchman would reveal the words "your name" tattooed on his butt cheek. It was kind of cringe, not going to lie, but he would get a laugh out of the girls, as well as their number. One of the girls happened to be someone I had a small crush on back in high school. She was too focused on the Frenchman to notice me struggling to catch my breath in the background, let alone recognize or remember me, which obliterated what little self-confidence I had left by the time we were done running. Day 3, asterisk. Also known as yesterday. The Frenchman was supposed to leave, but instead of saying goodbye, he asked for an extension. An extension with an incentive. The Frenchman said if I allowed him to stay for just 1 more day, he could arrange to have intimate relations in front of me with someone who was not his ex-girlfriend if, of course, that was still a fantasy I wanted to explore. I said it was too soon after what happened last time, which prompted him to pull out his phone and show me suggestive photographs on social media of an attractive girl who was apparently willing to engage in intimate acts while being watched. According to the Frenchman, she was like him, an exhibitionist. One of many exhibitionists the Frenchman claimed to know. I automatically stopped thinking with my brain after seeing what the girl looked like and instructed the Frenchman to pull whatever strings he had to pull to make that happen. The Frenchman confirmed that the girl had confirmed that she was free to engage in intimate acts from 7 o'clock in the evening. Fast forward to 7 o'clock in the evening. The Frenchman made dinner. I made sure the apartment was spotless. Both of us looked our best, but it was only the 2 of us. And it stayed the 2 of us long enough for me to begin wondering if the Frenchman really arranged to have intimate relations with someone, or if he was just willing to say anything to be my unofficial roommate for another day. What made me doubt his intentions even more was the fact that he was constantly feeding me. Literally. Like he would put a spoonful of whatever in my mouth every time he saw a gap. I never hated what I tasted. He is an excellent cook, but based on how day 1 ended, it was unclear if there was, something a tad bit suspect going on. I gradually gave up when it was almost 9 o'clock and no girl had arrived. Whenever I asked the Frenchman if she was still coming, he would end up calling or messaging her before telling me that she was not responding. I decided to finish my dinner and go to bed. A few minutes after 10 o'clock, The French man knocked on my door and informed me that the girl actually showed up. Against my better judgment, I got out of bed without changing out of my pajamas and left my room to meet the girl. I was more in the mood for sleep than to watch people engage in intimate relations, but the girl was very apologetic about being late and seemed keen to get going. Her looks and enthusiasm overshadowed the long list of random reasons she had for neglecting to respond to the Frenchman and showing up hours late, so I thought, you know what, let's just go with it. The girl took the lead when everyone agreed to proceed. She made me understand that it was very unusual for something like this to happen in such an impromptu way, but she owed the Frenchman a favor, so she was willing to go with the flow and skip straight to intimacy. Speaking of intimacy, there was, yet again, no intimacy. During foreplay, specifically during oral stimulation, the Frenchman struggled to become aroused. It happens to the best of us, so I didn't judge, but it was painful to watch, especially when it became obvious that he was not going to become aroused no matter what the poor girl did. The Frenchman repeatedly said, "I am so sorry," and subtly implied that his lack of arousal was due to not being used to engaging in voyeuristic acts with someone who was not his ex-girlfriend. When the girl heard ex-girlfriend, she stopped performing oral stimulation and suggested perhaps it was not the worst idea to accept defeat and call it a night. Both the Frenchman with the flaccid penis and the naked girl, whose mouth was not enough, looked at me for the final decision. I took my hand out of my pants and gave them a lackluster thumbs up. The girl wasted no time getting dressed. As she was putting on her clothes as fast as possible, she praised me for being adventurous enough to allow random people to engage in intimate acts under my roof, even though the intimacy never happened. But she also encouraged me to visit sex-positive clubs where exhibitionism and voyeurism were permitted, because it would be much safer and most likely more successful than allowing strangers into my personal space, only for them to disappoint me or worse. Leave stains on my boyfriend's gaming console. I never had a boyfriend or owned a gaming console, so I just assumed she was referring to an unpleasant experience she had in the past. There was no space for me to comment or ask questions or even react because her closing statement was that she had studying to do for an upcoming exam. So she was going to use the time she would have spent engaging in intimate acts with a handsome Frenchman in front of a guy wearing pajamas as a sign that she should have just stuck to studying to begin with. Before saying goodbye, she advised the Frenchman to explore healthier ways to move on from his ex and reminded me about what she said regarding the sex club. The Frenchman left my apartment this morning. Our bro hug felt final. I am not sure if I am going to see him again. I hope not. He is not a bad guy, but my life makes more sense without him in it, no offense to the French. To summarize, the Frenchman convinced me to let him stay at my place for a few days after his ex-girlfriend and current roommate was making his life unpleasant. His presence in my apartment came with a series of unfortunate events involving unexpectedly intimate and awkward moments between us, witnessing one of my high school crushes falling for the Frenchman's flirtation, and another attempt at watching people engage in intimate acts, only for it to end with the Frenchman being unable to maintain an erection.